even though there is also strike, but I heard it's been called off. It's been called off. Unfortunately, we're already here. I would have wished that the conference is holding in the university so that we have the opportunity of knowing the environment, of even using the facilities in the university. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Madam Vice Chancellor, Madam President of LAN, and the and members of the ESCO, I feel honored that I have to present this lead paper that I've entitled Digitizing Diversity, Embracing Innovation Towards the Preservation of Nigerian Languages in a Digital Era. My name is Ayo Yusuf, University of Lagos. Scholars, ladies and gentlemen of the press, I'm following Madam President in this one. That was what she said, and I've taken it. Ladies and gentlemen, generally now, we are gathered here to discuss a vital aspect of our cultural identity, our languages. We are here to catalog, particularly the challenges that pose the threat of extinction, or at least redundancy, to the languages of our land, and to brainstorm on the possible measures or strategies that we can employ to meet these challenges, and thus pave the way for the longevity of our languages. Language is not only a means of communication, it is also a vessel for the transmission of culture, identity, history, and heritage. However, language requires robust and sustained human use to maintain their usefulness in the aforementioned regards. Short of such sustained and enthusiastic deployment, a language may groan under the weight of precarity. This, unfortunately, is the story of many Nigerian languages, challenged by a multidimensional endangerment. Language endangerment occurs when a language is at risk of disappearing due to a decline in usage, speakers, and intergenerational transmission. This can happen when speakers shift to more widely spoken languages, often due to globalization, urbanization, or cultural assimilation, such as we are witnessing here, when we must, even in the Linguistic Association of Nigeria conference, talk to ourselves in the English language. Some common causes of language decline include globalization and cultural shift. That is, the spread of dominant languages can lead to a decline in local languages. Intergenerational transmission breakdown. That is, when young generations don't learn the language from their elders. Another one is urbanization and migration, when speakers may shift to more widely spoken languages in urban areas. Then, cultural stigma and marginalization. Speakers may feel ashamed or embarrassed to use their native languages. Then you have natural disasters and conflicts. That is, traumatic events can disrupt language use and transmission, such as we have in IDP camps. There are languages that have assimilated other smaller ones due to population of maybe a particular speakers of one language. Then limited data availability. This concerns what this conference is all about. Most Nigerian languages lack comprehensive linguistic data sets, making it difficult to develop language models and digital tools. Then you have the issue of tonal complexity. Languages like Yoruba and Igbo have tonal features that are hard to capture accurately in digital platforms. This peculiarity must be perfectly addressed. Then the issue of insufficient digital infrastructure. Rural areas where many Nigerian languages are spoken often lack reliable internet access, hindering language integration efforts. Then lastly, globalization and English dominance, that is the widespread use of English in digital spaces, which has led to a lack of representation and usage of Nigerian languages online. This is Abdurrahman 2025. In an increasingly globalized and digital world, the vitality of language is no longer determined only by its number of speakers, but also by its presence and adaptability in digital spaces. For Nigeria, a country recognized as one of the most linguistically diverse in the world, with over 500 languages, but I heard from Madam President this morning that she mentioned 540. It's still the same, it's still within the same region. This digital shift presents both opportunities and urgent challenges. The digital transition prompts us to consider how Nigerian languages can be preserved, promoted, and strengthened amid rapid technological advancements, while also acknowledging the structural, political, and economic barriers that complicate this process. In short, while digitization poses the particular threat of decline to certain, especially minority languages, it provides also the space, if harnessed, for both the preservation and the resuscitation of languages. Digitization in language involves more than just archiving or creating dictionaries. It includes developing digital corpora, natural language processing NLP tools, machine translation systems, text-to-speech and speech recognition technologies, predictive text applications, and integrating these into global platforms. These resources not only improve the everyday usability of languages in digital settings, but also help ensure that speakers are not excluded from participating in technological activities. As English continues to dominate the cyberspace and computational resources, Nigerian languages are at risk of being marginalized if intentional efforts are not made to secure their roles in the digital ecosystem. This paper begins with the observation that while digitization has greatly helped language survival in some parts of the world, Nigeria still falls behind the curve of this development. Unlike countries that have successfully made one indigenous language official and or prominent in terms of technological education, Nigeria's linguistic and political situation is much more complicated. The federal government has not chosen a single indigenous language for documentation and digital development, partly because of the competition among the three national languages, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, as well as the many minority languages that also need recognition. This situation has slowed down progress in developing digital tools, and many Nigerian languages remain underrepresented online. At the same time, there are clear signs of progress. Scholars, local communities, and tech developers are starting to see the importance of digitizing Nigerian languages, not just as a cultural effort, but also as an economic and technological necessity. The growth of artificial language, AI, and natural language processing, NLP, has highlighted the need for diverse language data in creating inclusive global technologies. In this context, digitizing Nigerian languages is more than just preservation. It's about allowing participation in the future of education, commerce, governance, and social life. This paper situates the challenges and opportunities of digitization within the historical, social, and political realities of Nigeria. It explores the meaning of the digital era for language use, emphasizing the dual possibility of empowerment or erasure, and highlights how the dominance of English exacerbates these dynamics. By examining existing works in the Nigerian NLP space and proposing strategies for leveraging regional development commissions to drive language digitization, the paper argues that the future of Nigerian languages depends on decentralized, technologically informed efforts. Such efforts must begin with a clear prioritization of widely spoken regional languages, while simultaneously creating frameworks that will later include minority languages. Only through such deliberate action can Nigeria ensure that its linguistic diversity thrives in the digital era rather than being relegated to the margins. An indigenous national language, a knotty problem that defies all arguments. Allow me to briefly deviate from the theme of digitization by recalling how Nigeria's linguistic diversity has posed a persistent challenge in selecting the single language as the country's official language. This issue is relevant for today's topic because, as I will demonstrate in the upcoming sections, language documentation and digitization demand substantial funding and are also time-consuming processes. It's worth noting that countries that have successfully digitized their languages can be broadly categorized into two groups. The first group consists of nearly monolingual nations, such as Japan and Iceland, which have few linguistic divisions and a centralized language planning policy. Consequently, the government has been able to provide substantial support for digitization and documentation, plan acquisition, and work towards a standardized educational approach using the indigenous language as the issues are less complex. The second group includes multilingual countries that have overcome the challenge of choosing an indigenous language. They have managed to select one that receives significant support and planning from funding bodies and the government alike, as seen in Tanzania and Indonesia. Nigeria should generally fall into this group. However, our problem is different because we have yet to select a single indigenous language as our national language, let alone digitize it. Let us briefly trace the origins of this problem and explain why it may be unfeasible to expect that a single indigenous language can serve Nigeria. Nigeria has designated 3 dominant indigenous languages as national languages. However, one question arises: can all 3 be digitized simultaneously and immediately? Considering the resources required, the answer is no. Funding is a significant challenge, but there is also a minority dimension to Nigeria's linguistic complexities. Since the early 1950s, when efforts to establish an indigenous national language began, various indigenous groups have proposed their own languages or opposed others. For instance, Akinyele 2000 highlights an interesting proposal by Mr. D.N. Oronsaye to adopt Hausa as the language of unity. 2 reasons support this proposal. 1, Hausa adheres to grammar rules more than any other Nigerian language, and native speakers wouldn't face additional disadvantages in learning it. Additionally, expanding Hausa into a national language will incur minimal cost due to its large population of speakers. Now, let's consider ourselves as speakers of the over 400 remaining indigenous languages, particularly those with relatively large number of speakers, such as Igbo, Yoruba, Kanuri, and others. While Oronsaye's proposal might be cost-effective for nationalizing Hausa, every other indigenous language is grammatically adequate to serve the purpose. As expected, Oronsaye's proposal was met with stiff rejection from Chief Anthony Enahoro. Enahoro, while considering the role of language in defining, expressing, and transmitting culture, condemned the proposal and instead supported the continued use of the English language. Akinyele 2000. The argument presented above remains relevant today. It suggests that English continues to dominate partly due to the fears of ethnic dominance. Minorities are concerned that the majority might overpower them. Consequently, Nigeria faces the choice of documenting and digitizing all its languages. While we do not entirely dismiss this possibility, it is crucial to acknowledge that such a task is not immediately feasible. Focusing on the three of national languages outside Igbo Yoruba, though naming them in this role has faced debate and controversy, the task still depends on proper documentation. This documentation ultimately lays the foundation for digitization. Take, for example, the Oxford English Corpus, which contains approximately 2 billion words, and the COCA, Coca English Corpus, which has over 1 billion words and is freely available online. These are valuable resources for linguists interested in both synchronic and diachronic studies. These are valuable resources for linguists interested in synchronic and diachronic sources. Such large, freely accessible collections of linguistic data are precisely what have set languages like English, French, Portuguese, and our three national languages, Hausa and Yoruba, apart. While linguists and computer scientists working with these languages benefit from data that has been documented for over a century, our languages are still classified as low-resource languages, those with limited resources. By low resource, we mean that the amount of language documentation necessary to drive digitization is insufficient. Although our review will focus on the three Nigerian languages mentioned earlier, to our knowledge, most African languages are also considered low-resource languages. An important question here is, how do we digitize without the required amount of data? The next section, I will examine the efforts made so far regarding the documentation and digitization of Nigerian languages. The digital turn, what the digital era means for languages. The rise of the digital age has brought unprecedented changes to how languages are used, preserved, and shared. This shift has transformed the functions and roles of language for linguists and language communities alike. Key factors driving this change include internet presence, natural language processing, NLP tools, digital literacy, and machine translation. Each of these elements plays an essential role in determining whether a language thrives or declines in today's digital world. Next, I will examine each of these factors in turn, highlighting progress made and outlining a path for future improvements. Online/internet presence. An online presence refers to a language's feasibility and usability in digital spaces, encompassing websites, blogs, ebooks, social media content, and user interfaces in that language. Languages with a strong online presence gain symbolic prestige and practical value, particularly among young users. Conversely, if a language is absent from online search engines, unable to be used in digital communication, its use may become limited to offline and private context, potentially leading to a gradual decline. In Nigeria today, only the three national languages and Nigerian Pidgin, Niger, have significant online feasibility and functionality. This online presence has not only increased cultural awareness among their speakers, but also generated valuable data for research in digital and computational linguistics. Yusuf et al. 2020 examined the significance of Yoruba language's online presence, highlighting digital communication contribution to its development. They note the rise in the languages used on platforms like Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, but point out the lack of English-driven technologies as a challenge. They recommend investing more time on research for terminology development. Bekene and Salahu 2025 focus on BBC Yoruba and acknowledge that its establishment revitalizes the language's use and improves information accessibility. This aligns with our position as digital platforms provide quick access to information, and languages lacking online presence risk gradual decline. The importance of online presence extends beyond Yoruba language. Due to space constraints, constraints, I encourage readers to explore works like Chukwuman Agbim, 2020, Nwakwegu, and others on Igbo, and by Adam et al., 2025, Zachary et al., 2021, and Zadam et al., 2023 on Hausa. It's important to remember that we have emphasized the significance of developing terminologies and terms to improve language use in digital spaces. While we acknowledge the progress made in this field, some notable examples include a vocabulary of primary science and mathematics in 9 Nigerian languages by NADEC, 1990. Quadrilingual glossary of legislative terms, Federal Ministry of Education, Lagos, 1991. Bridging understanding in Medicare template for effective communication in indigenous languages, Yusuf and Fadairo, 2013. And then the trial of English Yoruba glossary of HIV, AIDS, and Ebola-related terms, Yusuf et al. English Hausa glossary of HIV, AIDS, and Ebola terms, Amfani and Ibrahim. English Igbo glossary of HIV, AIDS, and Ebola-related terms, Igwanusi and Mba, all 2017. Yusuf and Fadairo 2013 provide a substantial medical terminology for the Yoruba language, demonstrating that the language's morphosyntax can accommodate innovations in the medical field. So there are examples here. Urinalysis, called Iyetowo, act of cross-checking urine. Scanning, the act of committing internal organs into graphical and pictorial forms. What we are trying to say here is that our languages have internal mechanisms that can derive words for new terms and notions. We don't need to rush to learning. Those languages are so powerful that when you bring new scientific terms, they are able to explain them. Terminology development marked the beginning of language revitalization efforts in Nigeria. However, these efforts have mainly focused on academic and specialized topics, such as mathematics and medicine. A simple chat GPT prompt, what are the top 4 most discussed topics on Nigerian social media spaces, on July 8, 2025, generated the following topics: politics, sports, entertainment, and finance. Therefore, terminology development must now expand to include the interest of Nigerian netizens, since they constitute a larger percentage of digital platform users. The task ahead is now more complex than it used to be. Let us examine the challenges from 2 different perspectives. First, we aim to equip our indigenous languages with the necessary terms to enable them to function as languages of instruction, at least from nursery, primary, to secondary education levels. This goal is far from being achievable, considering the lack of proper funding for such projects and the linguistic attitude of native speakers. Second, for the languages to survive the digital turn, we must engage the younger generation in their daily online use. For example, since they are interested in discussing sports and entertainment, we need to attract their interest by providing indigenous terms for some of their most common terminology. For football, what do we call penalty? Or what do we call free kick? I've listened to some commentaries in Yoruba, some soccer commentaries, and sometimes I listen to them and I get amazed at the words they are using for some of this. For midfielder, a goal, handball, all of those indigenous languages. Without these terms, it will not be easy to counter the dominance of the English language in online conversations. To this end, we can conclude that available terminologies are the result of individual scholars with specific interest. Very few coordinated efforts have been undertaken so far. Next, we assess the progress in implementing natural language processing tools for digitization. Natural language processing tools. Natural language processing is essential for digitizing and conserving languages, especially in linguistically diverse and underserved regions like Nigeria. With more than 500 languages spoken there, NLP tools can aid in machine translation, voice assistance, grammar correction, and educational tools, all of which are critical for fair digital access. However, many Nigerian languages lack fundamental digital tools, such as spell checkers, grammar checkers, predictive text, TTS, and ASR, due to data scarcity, linguistic complexity, and low commercial interest. Consequently, major Nigerian languages such as Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, and Nigerian Pidgin Niger are mostly absent from mainstream NLP resources. Most lack comprehensive language models, annotated or freely available corpora, or even basic digital dictionaries, all of which are necessary to develop tools common in high resource languages like English or French. Below, we briefly explore some interconnected factors that explain the status of NLP tools for Nigerian languages. To begin, natural language processing structures rely on the availability of large data sets of text and speech, also known as corpora. However, Nigerian languages, like most African languages, fall into the category of resource scarce or low resource languages. Adelani et al. 2021. This situation results from the limited and scattered availability of data for practitioners and researchers to utilize. For practical NLP model training, substantial high-quality text data are necessary. Most Nigerian languages lack digitized text, corpora, and lexicons. Even when data exists, such as Bible translations, it is often limited to translations and not representative of everyday language use, which reduces its usefulness in downstream applications. This section highlights the importance of corpus development for Nigerian languages, considering it a critical first step for all subsequent NLP tools and research. The Masaka NER, Adelani et al. 2021, is an annotated data set for named entity recognition, NER, that includes languages such as Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, and Niger, that's Nigerian Pidgin English. The data for this corpora were collected from local news sources, ensuring that data is relevant and meaningful to native speakers from each region where the languages are spoken. Annotation was also performed by native speakers volunteering through the Masakane community. These corpora are publicly accessible and have laid the foundation for developing more advanced tools. Additionally, there is the Niger NER dataset created by Oyewusi et al. 2021, which covers 5 Nigerian languages. Like Masaka NER, data was collected from 50 online news articles, focusing on 2 main categories, general and sports. Besides the above text corpora, other efforts such as Masaka News, Adelani et al. 2023, which concentrates on news topic classification, contribute to developing another set of domain-specific classifiers. Also, there is Niger RC, Aremu et al. 2024, a reading comprehensive data set for the 3 indigenous national languages, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. Despite this progress, grammar checkers and predictive text systems remain limited due to the lack of systematic annotated corpora such as tree banks or morphologically rich POS tagged corpora. Talking about speech data sets, FLEURS, FLEURS, and Bible TTS include some Nigerian languages, but neither offers comprehensive coverage. Many of these come from translated religious or news texts, which can exhibit translationese traits, making them less ideal for natural interaction. Alabi et al. 2025. TTS systems for Nigerian languages are still in the early stages of development, with limited phonological or prosodic modeling Similarly, speech recognition systems are limited by the lack of data sets over 100 hours long, which are necessary for effective training. In efforts to develop more accessible speech data sets, there is the YFACC, a Yoruba speech image data set for cross-lingual keyboard localization through visual grounding, Olaleye et al. 2022, and Iroyin Speech, a corpus combining news data and fictional text to create a modern, versatile speech data set, Ogunremi et al. 2024. Projects already carried out in other languages include, among others, Hausa NLP, for the development of Hausa language resources and tools for NLP tasks, Igbo NLP project, implementation of basic language resources kit for the Igbo language. Finally, it is not enough for us to identify the lack of resources as the main problem facing efforts to create digital tools for Nigerian languages. There are other significant barriers that must be addressed if substantial progress is to be made to resource development. First is the absence of standard orthographies or writing system for some languages. For example, Nigerian Pidgin has no universally accepted orthography yet. And many others, Ibibio, Edo, Kanuri, have limited written standards. This creates challenges for developing spell checkers, grammar checkers, or predictive text systems. Second, insufficient governmental and institutional support also hampers resource development. Unlike some countries that have adopted an official indigenous language for official use and NLP investment, Nigeria has no single language prioritized for NLP. Political and ethnic complexities surrounding language use have made consensus difficult. However, as will be suggested, the recently established development commissions could help reduce this gap. Lastly, linguistic diversity and intra-language fragmentation present additional challenges. While the limited resources are spread across many languages, intra-linguistic competition further dilutes them. Most efforts so far have concentrated on Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo, leaving hundreds of languages untouched. The fate of the Akokoid cluster illustrates this situation. Based on the above, for Nigerian languages to establish a strong digital presence, focused efforts are needed to create large-scale data sets that are open source and not translated. Additionally, issues like poor language documentation and the lack of standardized orthographies must be addressed. Furthermore, as far as we know, natural language processing and computational linguistics are only offered at the University of Ibadan. If we have others, I would love to know. More academic programs in computational linguistics focused on Nigerian languages are necessary to attract researchers and promote interdisciplinary research. We acknowledge the important contributions of several important figures in the NLP computational linguistics landscape in Nigeria, whose names may not appear in this brief review above. They include, but are not limited to, Tunde Adegbola, Clement Odoje, Chris Emezue, Tunde Ajayi. Their works are only left out of the review for reasons of space. In summary, although spell checkers, grammar tools, and voice assistants are largely unavailable for Nigerian languages today, the groundwork is being laid for their future development. Continued growth in the NLP field, especially with open access models and corpora, provides a more linguistically inclusive digital future for Nigerian languages. Machine translation. Machine translation for Nigerian languages has become an important research area within the broader field of natural language processing, but it remains significantly underdeveloped compared to languages worldwide. Nigerian languages such as Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa have received some attention, mainly due to their large speaker population and cultural importance. However, with over 500 plus languages in Nigeria, MT research has only just begun to address what is necessary for effective digital inclusion, C. Akiade et al. 2023. Odoje 2013 A and B for an overview of important issues. One of the most notable efforts in machine translation for Nigerian languages is the development of bilingual and multilingual corpora. Initiatives such as the JW300, Parallel Corpus, and the translation project for the Bible and religious texts have provided valuable data resources for training machine translation systems. More recently, the Masakeni project, a grassroots research effort by African NLP practitioners, has made significant contributions to machine translation by creating open source translation models for multiple African languages, including Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. These models use neural machine translation, NMT, frameworks, and showcase the potential of collaborative, community-driven efforts to address resource scarcity. Despite these advances, machine translation for Nigerian languages still faces significant challenges. First, the absence of large, balanced, and domain-diverse corpora makes it hard to develop reliable translation systems. Most available resources come from religious or news sources, which limits their ability to cover general language use. Second, the complexity of Nigerian languages, including tonal features, rich morphology, and dialectal differences, presents unique linguistic obstacles for machine models. For example, tonal distinctions in Yoruba and Igbo require advanced modeling to prevent mistranslation. Third, the widespread use of English in Nigerian digital space reduces the motivation for large-scale machine translation development, since English already functions as the primary language for education, government, and media. Nonetheless, ongoing research shows how MT can help preserve and promote Nigerian languages. Machine translation tools will enhance access to digital content, support education in local languages, and improve cross-linguistic communication. The few systems developed so far have shown promise in increasing digital literacy and aiding language documentation. To advance, researchers recommend building larger parallel and monolingual corpora, fostering collaborations between linguists and computer scientists, and seeking funding for African-led NLP initiatives. In summary, although MT in Nigerian languages is still in its early stages, current efforts, especially those led by Masakani and related open source initiatives, set the foundation for wider applications. With increased investment, corpus development, and interdisciplinary collaboration, MT could become a valuable tool for digitizing the linguistic diversity of Nigeria. Digitization, empowerment, or erasure. It is now time to discuss this rather important question. Digitization by its very nature is neither inherently empowering nor inherently destructive. It is the structure and purpose of digitization processes that determine their outcomes. On the one hand, digitization provides a powerful platform for language empowerment. With the right tools and support, communities can record oral histories, develop dictionaries, build mobile applications for language learning, and create social media content in their native tongues. Languages that have historically been marginalized in education and policy can find new life in digital spaces, potentially even reversing patterns of decline. On the other hand, digitization can accelerate the loss of minority languages, especially when language infrastructure is not inclusive. If a language isn't integrated into the code bases of major platforms, supported by fonts or keyboards, or included in automatic translation tools, its speakers might feel encouraged to abandon it for more dominant languages. This pattern is well documented in many multilingual societies, where the shift from minority to majority languages is driven not only by economic or political reasons, but also by technological factors. The digital world can thus strengthen or even deepen existing linguistic hierarchies. For example, in Nigeria, many language communities struggle to develop orthography, standard spellings, or Unicode support. Without institutional or government backing, these languages face an uncertain future online. Additionally, the global focus on data-driven tools means that languages with limited written material or digital collections are less likely to receive support from tech companies. In this way, digitization can reinforce the colonial logic that once labeled certain languages as unfit for science and administration. Only now, the gatekeeper is the algorithm. Towards an inclusive utilization of languages. Reversing this trend requires a deliberate national strategy. Merely celebrating linguistic diversity is not enough. Nigeria must invest in the infrastructure needed to preserve this diversity in the digital age. This includes funding for local language corpora, fostering collaborations between linguists and technologists, creating policy incentives for developers to include indigenous languages in their products, and launching public education campaigns that emphasize the importance of utilizing local languages. Furthermore, Nigerian universities, publishers, and media outlets should adopt multilingualism in their digital content. The goal should be to make it easy to type, search, and learn in Igbo, Ibibio, Hausa, Yoruba, as it is in English. The digital age offers both risk and opportunities. Whether Nigeria's languages flourish or fade, the digital world depends on the collective choices of governments, institutions, tech companies, and communities. A multilingual digital Nigeria is not only possible, but vital for equitable participation in the 21st century. Some final remarks. In the Southeast, the focus should be on developing a standardized dialect of Igbo. Igbo presents unique challenges due to its dialectal variety. What I'm trying to say here is that the new Regional Development Commission set up by the federal government will play a very serious role here. Where in Southwest, Yoruba is dominant, in Southeast, Igbo is dominant, in South-South, you have the Nigerian Pidgin, in Northwest, you have Hausa. North Central also is also has Hausa as a dominant language, and then Northeast, maybe Kanuri. If these regional commissions put their effort into developing these languages, we will have started from somewhere. So this regional approach provides a practical path for digitizing Nigeria's linguistic diversity. It acknowledges the limitation of the federal government, which cannot realistically fund all major and minor language digitization projects simultaneously. So if we leverage on this, we'll be able to move further. The approach also creates models that can later be expanded to include minority languages. Conclusion. The digitization of Nigerian languages sits at the crossroads of cultural preservation and technological progress. As this paper has demonstrated, although notable progress has been made to corpus creation, NLP research, and advocacy for language technologies, the future path requires both strategic planning and practical steps. Nigerian linguistic diversity is too expensive for the federal government to fund and digitize all languages at once. Instead, regional development commissions can take on this responsibility, starting with the most spoken languages in their regions: Standard Yoruba, Southwest, Igbo, Southeast, Hausa, Northwest, and North Central, Kanuri, Northeast, Nigerian Pidgin in the South-South. This strategy offers a realistic plan that balances inclusiveness with feasibility. Ultimately, digitizing Nigerian languages is not just a technical task, but also a political, cultural, and generational effort. It requires collaboration among governments, scholars, technology developers, and communities. If approached with urgency and foresight, digitization can ensure a vibrant future for Nigerian languages, preserving them not only in archives, but also actively using innovating, and living them in the digital age. Nigeria's linguistic diversity, once seen as a challenge, can become one of its greatest strengths in building a more inclusive digital future. Thank you very much for your attention. That's for you.
Please, let's muster another round of applause for Professor Ayo Yusuf. Chair. Well, there are two Ayos functioning actually. One is Fumilayo, the other one is Ayo. Now let's hear from the chair herself. Fumilayo, how to go this away?
Professor Akiremi, are you ready? Okay. No, so we take all the comments together. Hmm? So you have 30 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the LAN ESCO and the organizers of this conference for this opportunity. I'm trying to keep to established protocols because my time is already counting. Thank you very much. Can I have my paper on the screen, please? I've entitled my presentation, Nigerian Languages in the Digital Era, Challenges and Opportunities. And if you've been following the proceedings since morning, you will see that a lot of emphasis is being laid on certain areas, right from the keynote address through this first lead paper into my own. And I'm just hoping that this emphasis will have the right effect so that we'll leave this conference and take action where we should. Now, the theme of this conference is Nigerian Languages in the Digital Era. I reflected on the theme and studied the conference flyer and the conference sub-themes to try to find out why the organizers of this conference should choose this theme over other possible options. And my attention was attracted by the introductory statement at the top of the conference flyer. It makes reference to the boundless opportunities available to Nigerian languages, noting that the digital transformation of Nigerian languages will ensure their vitality and accessibility in the 21st century, and that the digital revolution offers unprecedented opportunities to preserve, promote, and empower Nigerian languages. And I would like to connect this statement to an important observation by the UNESCO Ad Hoc Expert Group on Endangered Languages, UNESCO 2003, which says that the capacity of a language to readily expand into new media, including broadcast media and the internet, is a critical parameter for assessing its vitality. The UNESCO document notes that this capacity usually serves only to expand the scope and power of the dominant language at the expense of endangered languages. Nigerian languages are generally struggling to secure a place in the digital space, and for most of them, the response to new domains and media is slow or inexistent. Now, having said that, I now proceed with the 6 things I would like to accomplish in this paper, which are to review the current state of Nigerian languages in the digital era, 2, to identify digital tools and resources for Nigerian languages, 3, to identify the challenges to integrating Nigerian languages into the digital ecosystem, 4, to highlight the potential and opportunities that digital tools and resources offer to Nigerian languages in a rapidly globalizing world, 5, to make suggestions and recommendations for positioning Nigerian languages to take advantages of opportunities in the digital era, and 6, to briefly conclude the paper. I hope I'll be able to do all 6. The first segment is the state of Nigerian languages in the digital era. Now, the challenges that the over 500 languages of Nigeria grapple with are well documented, including marginalization in the education system, weak implementation of policy frameworks, such as the National Policy on Education and the National Language Policy, lack of resources for teacher training and instructional materials. The effects of this state of affairs are also well documented, including endangerment, cultural erosion, and shrinking intergenerational transmission. I've put the sources, in the PowerPoint to save our time. Now, added to this state of affairs is the fact that most indigenous Nigerian languages are marginalized in the digital domain because of their low level of usage and because they do not readily expand into the new media. This marginalization reflects the fact that advancements in digital technology have divided the world's languages into 2, namely the high-resource languages like English, German, French, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, which boast of an abundance of resources such as books, movies, digital texts, and the availability of a large quantity of quality speech resources. And then the low-resource languages like African and Nigerian languages, which are less studied, resource scarce, and less digitized, among other denominators, one for Nguyen 2025. Imam et al. 2025 described the marginalization of African languages as a situation of digital exclusion, which restricts access to vital technologies. I will mention here 4 illustrations of the digital marginalization of Nigerian languages and the gap in the development of vital digital technologies and resources in these languages. Luckily for me, much of this has been covered by the last speaker. The first area is in machine translation. Only a few languages have actually benefited from this technological advancement, and Nigerian languages are largely underrepresented, one for Nguyen 2025. The next area is automatic speech recognition, and there is a general lack or unavailability of research and resources in automatic speech recognition for African languages. These languages have remained significantly sidelined in both research and practical applications in automatic speech recognition technologies. The third area is the current models of natural language processing, NLP. Nigerian languages remain significantly underrepresented in current language processing models. Hussein et al. Note that the advancements and benefits of large language models, which is the core technology that powers applications like ChatGPT, developed by OpenAI, have primarily concentrated on high-resource languages and are largely absent for at least 98% of the over 2,000 languages of Africa. In addition, only about 42 African languages have any support in existing large language models, small language models, and specialized small language models. Primarily, these are languages with large speaker populations or official status. Now, this is in spite of the fact that African languages account for approximately 28.5% of the over 7,000 languages of the world and are spoken by hundreds of millions of people across the continent. Even Hausa, which is spoken by almost 50 million people in West and Central Africa, and is the language with the largest population of speakers in Nigeria, has the status of a low-resource language in terms of representation in large language models. The final area of marginalization is social media platforms. Nigerian languages, including the big 3, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, which are spoken by tens of millions of people, have a limited presence on social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. These platforms primarily operate in English, leaving minimal support for Nigerian languages. Now, in spite of these gaps in the development of digital technologies, digital resources are available for some Nigerian languages, and I'll just mention some of them. So we go to the second section, which is digital resources for Nigerian languages. Nwankwegu 2021 has classified digital technologies for the development of an indigenous language, Nigerian language like Igbo, into the following types. We have online platforms, mobile applications, social media and online communities, e-learning and distance education, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. In the same vein, next slide, our Day 2025 has also classified the different technologies that can be employed for indigenous language teaching and revitalization into the following: interactive language learning apps like Duolingo or U-Dictionary, audiovisual content such as animated cartoons, nursery rhymes, storybooks voiced in indigenous languages, YouTube channels targeting kids aged 3 to 10, gamification and AR/VR to teach basic vocabulary, AI natural language processing, etc. Now, what are the digital tools and resources available in the three major Nigerian languages? For Hausa, there is a growing body of digital resources available for the language, including the following: lexical databases. We have Hausa WordNet, archive.org, etc. Online dictionaries, online platforms offering Hausa grammars and courses, interactive learning systems, podcasts and audiobooks, tools for sentiment analysis, adaptation of Ajami Arabic script for a variety of uses, including the development of fonts and smartphone applications. For Igbo, there are resources such as mobile apps for language learning, like the Omenka app. We also have Igbo 101, Speak Igbo, Igbo Alphabet, Isabi Igbo Plus, etc. There are online platforms with a variety of digital Igbo resources, like Ezinolo, Learn Igbo by Conversation, Igbo Amaka Cultural Institute. There are also online dictionaries, nkawoku.com and others, interactive platforms offering Igbo language courses, YouTube channels, social media channels. Now for Yoruba, there are also a variety of resources like lexical databases, Yoruba learning websites, YouTube channels, language learning apps, podcasts, social media platforms, online tutors. Now, apart from the three major languages, there are digital resources for some other Nigerian languages. Some of these have been mentioned, in the keynote address and also by the last speaker. But one example I would like to point out is the Olukumi Talking Dictionary, Anderson, Arokoyo, and Harrison, 2015. And I would like to ask us a question at this point. What resources are there in other Nigerian languages? What resources are there in the language of your interests as a linguist? I would like you to list them or note them as we continue. But the bottom line is that Nigerian languages are at different levels in the development of digital tools and resources. As noted by UDO 2021, digital tools are needed for work on different aspects of Nigerian languages, both software and hardware, and for different activities: surveys, fieldwork, documentation, archiving, etc. We consider next the challenges to the development of digital tools and resources for Nigerian languages. There are so many factors responsible for the underdevelopment of Nigerian languages in the digital sphere. We explore some of them now in no particular order. The first is the linguistic digital divide. Speakers of Nigerian indigenous languages who live in rural areas are often excluded from digital advancements. They lack access to smartphones, internet services, and the necessary digital literacy to engage with digital content in their native languages. In contrast, people in metropolitan areas have more exposure to technology, albeit in global languages, predominantly English. The digital divide and the associated technological barriers restrict the availability of online resources and platforms to a substantial portion of the population of the speakers of Nigerian languages. The number 2 challenge is a gap in research contributions. Although research into developing digital tools for Nigerian languages is increasing, it is still in its infancy, and a lot still needs to be done. There is generally still very little comparable research in natural language processing for African languages, and research on voice recognition for African languages is limited. I'll put all the references there. Muhammad et al. 2025 have observed that for Hausa that although it is a well-documented language, it remains underrepresented in natural language processing research, having received relatively little attention and lacking open source corpora that can be used for many natural language processing tasks. Furthermore, the few available Hausa corpora are dispersed and difficult to access. Number 3 challenge, infrastructural challenges and high computational costs. There is a general lack of the infrastructure required for the development of speech and language technologies for African languages. Number 4 challenge, severe data scarcity. The gap in technological development has led to a data gap in Nigerian languages. That is, a severe lack of digital speech and language resources. Hussein et al. 2025 notes that existing models of natural language processing, especially large language models, require vast amounts of training data and infrastructure, and the scarcity of speech data poses substantial barriers to NLP development for African languages, adding that benchmark availability is often sparse and unevenly distributed across tasks. There is also a scarcity of digital resources for voice recognition training and adaptation for African languages. The data gap makes it difficult for speakers of Nigerian languages to interact with digital content in their mother tongues. An example is given by Ekekwe 2025 from the field of AI data annotation. The absence of computing infrastructure like scaled data systems for Nigerian languages prevents AI models from effectively serving the vast population that primarily communicates in these languages. We are told in the morning that whether we like it or not, AI is advancing, and if we don't connect, we'll get left behind. So the fact is that since AI models are trained predominantly in English data, they struggle to perform optimally when applied to contexts where Nigerian languages are prevalent. Muhammad et al. Also notes the limited open source data sets and inadequate model representation for Hausa. The consequence of this data gap and the inability of speakers of Nigerian languages to interact with mother tongue-based digital content is language attrition, especially among the younger generations who are more likely to adopt dominant languages like English. Number 5 challenge, lack of language-specific digital resources and tools for Nigerian languages. This has been noted for Igbo by Nwankwegu 2021. In a study by Iluene and others notes that even where new technologies are available for the teaching of a Nigerian language like Igbo, and even when teachers have skills in the use of these facilities, the teachers are limited in the use of them because the symbols, in the language are not available by default. The symbols used in writing the language are not available by default on the standard keyboard. Neither are there software programs that support easy use of the indigenous languages on the computer and the internet. Number 6 problem or challenge, rather. The unique properties of some African languages. This has been highlighted by the last speaker. Some of our languages have diacritical, morphological, and tonal complexities. These affect text-based natural language processing. For example, some errors found in speech-to-text we've not got to this point. Some errors found in speech-to-text corpora and data pre-processing involving Igbo were found to be mostly due to omission or mismatch of diacritics. Similarly, the use of diacritics above alphabetical characters to convey phonological information was found to limit the effectiveness of a proposed model of speech recognition technology in Hausa. And for Yoruba, one of the challenges in the development of the digital Yoruba corpus was the non-availability of digital text with diacritics. Elsewhere in Africa, the morphological complexity of some Ethiopian languages were found to result in very high out-of-vocabulary rates. That's by Abate et al. 2020. It has also been noted that the preservation of culture and the digitization and integration of rich oral traditions such as storytelling and folklore into modern digital formats while maintaining their authenticity poses a unique challenge. That's Nwankwo 2021 for Igbo. This should be true for other Nigerian languages. Number 7 challenge, lack of standardized orthographies. This has also been mentioned. There are many underdeveloped languages in Nigeria which do not have orthographies, UDO 2021. Some other languages have orthographies that are not generally acceptable or standardized. In the development of digital resources for Nigerian languages, inconsistent orthographies are a major challenge. Hussein et al. Also note that a unified approach to orthography and language coding is essential for ensuring the effective digital integration of Nigerian languages. Number 8, financial constraints. Securing adequate funding and sponsorship could be very challenging. And many of the initiatives in technological development for Nigerian languages depend on funds, from donor agencies, depend on grants, donations, government support. And these may not always be sufficient or consistent. Number 9, cultural and societal factors. These include the attitudes of Nigerians to Nigerian languages. The learning of global languages being prioritized over, the learning of indigenous language for economic opportunities. And also some ambivalent and negative attitudes have even, have been shown to have direct consequences for the use of Nigerian languages in digital spaces. I'm quoting Ezamalukwe 2024. She noted that on the BBC, Yoruba, and Igbo Facebook platforms, which are dedicated to these two languages, Nigerians would rather speak English on those platforms. BBC Igbo, BBC Yoruba, they will go there and speak English, So the attitudes, ambivalent or negative, will affect the use of the language and even affect the development of digital resources for those languages. Number 10, the lack of collaboration and synergy among stakeholders. Using Igbo as an example, as an illustration, Nwankwo 2021 has noted the roles of various stakeholders in fostering a digitally empowered ecosystem that supports Nigerian languages. Educational institutions have the responsibility of integrating indigenous language courses into formal education supported by state-of-the-art digital tools. Technology companies contribute technical expertise to develop innovative language learning applications and platforms. Governments and nonprofits provide funding, resources, and policy support. And cultural organizations and community groups ensure cultural authenticity and community engagement. While efforts have been made in all these directions, stakeholders have tended to work in isolation from one another, and there has been no synergy in making the various efforts to be channeled towards targeted outputs and timelines. Number 11, lack of incentive. This includes lack of incentives for developers to localize digital content. The last speaker mentioned that. And it also includes a lack of teacher incentives or recognition for indigenous languages or language instruction, which is a challenge to technology-based language learning in Nigeria. The last, but not the least, challenge is lack of knowledge of available technologies. The keynote speaker made reference to this, and I would like to just add support to that by quoting from the Holy Bible in Hosea chapter 6, verse 9. It is said there that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. The tendency for language practitioners like us to carry on as usual and not spare time and effort to update our knowledge about digital developments and their benefits for Nigerian languages and to develop capacity in using these digital developments is a real challenge which must be confronted. We now consider the opportunities that the digital era offers to Nigerian languages and cultures. That's the fourth part of my presentation. The digital era offers new possibilities for Nigerian languages and what language practitioners can actually do with languages. The new possibilities are in the areas like language learning and cultural engagement and so on and so forth. But I would like to say that one way for us to understand the value of such opportunities is to consider what will happen or what will be the consequence of our overlooking them. If we overlook these opportunities, what will happen? What will be the effect, for example, of our not preserving our languages? What would happen if we failed in intergenerational transmission of our languages to the younger generations? Now let's look at these opportunities in this light. Number one, language learning and cultural engagement. Research has shown that digital tools enhance language learning and cultural engagement. They ease the acquisition of relevant literacy skills and facilitate proficiency in indigenous languages. For example, cell phones enhance the writing skills of Nigerian children in indigenous languages as they learn how to write text messages in these languages. And then language learning apps on cell phones offer learners the opportunity to link oral communication with written communication, thus improving their writing, speaking, and reading skills in the indigenous languages. I'm quoting AZE 2023. Technology also enhances both the teaching and learning of indigenous languages. It enhances indigenous language learning by both L1 and L2 learners in the university, according to AZE 2023. For cultural engagement, social media platforms in particular offer powerful tools for sharing content, connecting communities, and fostering language use. Number two area of opportunities, language and culture development and promotion. The digital revolution can strengthen the use of languages among native speakers and their transmission to new generations of learners. It provides opportunity for indigenous languages to become useful in science and technology, which arouses the interest of students to proudly study these languages in the university. This makes the languages more productive, versed, and globalized, as of 2023. Thus, digital technology can be strategically employed to check the lack of intergenerational transmission that is a major challenge for most of our indigenous languages. This is also true for the promotion of Nigerian cultures. It has been noted for Igbo that digitizing traditional media of communication is a means of projecting Igbo culture of communication to the younger and unborn generations in the era of digital media. Wamini et al. 2025. Thus, instead of Nigerian languages and cultures continuing in the mold of undeveloped or non-global, it is time for digital technology to be harnessed to develop and promote them. Nigerian languages can be made accessible, viable, and more attractive for native and non-native speakers, for tourists, and even for NYSC members who are posted, away from their states of origin. Fabolu et al. 2015, Ukebu and Obiaboso 2025. Number three area of opportunities in language and culture preservation and revitalization. One new possibility offered by digital technology is the preservation of linguistic and cultural heritage. UDO 2023 notes the role of social media platforms in providing critical channels for sharing information and providing preservable audio, multimedia, and text data. Social media platforms like YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Reddit, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn have billions of users. They generate indigenous language texts, recordings, and print data that can preserve and disseminate indigenous languages. Again, language preservation is possible through digital archives. I quote Udo 2023 when she says, online archives and databases present significant opportunities to document and preserve Nigerian languages, especially the endangered ones. The digitization of historical and cultural texts in Nigerian languages would not only provide educational resources for speakers and ensure that future generations have access to their linguistic heritage, but they would also make Nigerian languages accessible to a broader audience by facilitating their integration into digital platforms. Digital technology also has the capacity of revitalizing indigenous Nigerian languages if they are equipped like high-resource languages. Our Inde 2025 notes that leveraging digital technology can help Nigerian languages shift from endangerment to empowerment. He notes the potential of gamification of online resources to revitalize interest in Nigerian languages among children and to attract L2 learners. In other words, the typical elements of game playing and interaction can be leveraged in online resources to combat the endangerment and lack of intergenerational transmission of Nigerian languages. If you are like me and you are learning a new language on Duolingo, I don't know how many there are here, you will agree with me that gamification is also effective for adult language learning. I'm learning a new language on Duolingo. And some young people that are introduced to Duolingo, they are learning Japanese. One is learning Chinese. One is learning German. You know, it's very interesting, even for adult language learners. And we can use such for our languages. Social and economic advantages. That's the number 4 area of opportunity. There are also social and economic advantages to be gained from the digital integration of Nigerian languages. In the aspect of the development of AI models that understand and process information in Nigerian languages, Ekekwe 2025 notes that the integration of AI with local languages would significantly expand market reach, especially to communities that are not fully proficient in English. This would unlock substantial economic and social opportunities by filling the market void created by the absence of scaled data systems for Nigerian languages. It would offer substantial competitive advantages for businesses, for researchers, for innovators, to drive business growth and empower communities that have historically been underserved. The author notes that this would have profound implications for various sectors, including research labs, big tech companies, local consumer goods companies, open markets, and video shopping platforms, all seeking to connect with Nigerian communities in their preferred languages. These sectors can leverage localized AI to enhance consumer engagement and reach. We go to the 5th section of this paper, solutions and recommendations. I bring this paper to a close by recommending steps to address the challenges noted above, so as to better position Nigerian languages to leverage the benefits of the digital age. In doing this, I reiterate previous calls by scholars and researchers, with the hope that the emphasis that results from this will have the desired effect in the appropriate quarters. In general, however, let me note that there is need to analyze barriers to the digital integration of Nigerian languages and to identify practical inclusive strategies. You can see Imam et al. 2025 for that idea. So this requires the combined efforts of all stakeholders. Number 1 recommendation is the development and standardization of the orthographies of all Nigerian languages. This is the 3rd time this is being said in this conference. Since morning, we have been told that it is very important for Nigerian languages, all of them, to have standardized orthographies. Highlighting the importance of orthography for underdeveloped Nigerian languages, UDO 2021 describes it as the first step of development after the preliminary phonological description of a language. With an orthography, a literary tradition, and other forms of empowerment can follow. Hussein et al. 2025 also notes that language standardization and corpus development by the community are crucial for their integration into digital platforms and the development of resources for them. Number 2 recommendation is an improvement of the quality of digital data available for Nigerian languages. Hussein et al. 2025 notes the importance of promoting community-driven data collection, standardizing scripts, and expanding benchmarks across diverse tasks. Linguists have a vital role to play in ensuring that the quality of Nigerian language data provided for the digital space are both technically accurate and culturally authentic. UDO 2021, Awori Day 2025. And linguists also have a role in contributing to the development of systems like Google Translate by creating grammars and data sets for underrepresented languages. Arokoyo 2025. Number 3 suggestion or recommendation. Eliminating or at least reducing the digital gap is very important. This requires solutions like expanding broadband infrastructure, providing low-cost devices, and securing diverse funding sources. The stakeholders in this regard need to wake up to this responsibility. Number 4 recommendation. The peculiarities of Nigerian languages need to be addressed in practical ways. UDO 2023 recommends the creation of computer keyboards for Nigerian languages using a harmonized orthography with all the special letters in the different languages instead of using the English keyboard. A similar view is expressed by Fabolu et al., who suggests that the authorities vested with the development of ICT in Nigerian languages need to present a request to the Unicode Consortium so that the characters using the orthographies of Nigerian languages would come as pre-composed characters. Dosu and Emezue 2021 also recommend that the linguistic complexities of African languages for text-based natural language processing will require careful speech interpretation, which could provide more intuition on how to deal with them. Number 5 recommendation is funding for language technology. Key players like the Linguistic Association of Nigeria must brainstorm and put in place practical strategies for securing institutional and government backing with funding, resources, and inclusion of Nigerian languages in digital services, alongside fostering international collaborations. This will help to elevate Nigerian language representation in digital research. Next. Number 6 recommendation is systematic coordination of stakeholders' efforts. The need for increased collaboration between stakeholders, including researchers, educational institutions, tech experts and companies, governments, language enthusiasts, educators, and community groups in efforts to position Nigerian languages for vitality in the digital age cannot be emphasized. Wankwegu 2021, UDO 2021. However, the additional step that is needed at this point is a systematic coordination of such efforts. UDO 2021 and 2023 has noted that research, documentation, and development of digital tools have tended to be haphazard. Stakeholders have tended to work in isolation without finding out what others are doing in different areas, comparing notes, brainstorming, and planning strategies. Thus, there is a need for a more systematic, team-oriented, interdisciplinary approach to these issues to be put in place. Stakeholders must pool their efforts together in order to position Nigerian languages for vitality in the digital age. Advocacy in this area must be accompanied by practical action, which can be initiated by the Linguistic Association of Nigeria. Our in Day 2025 has proposed the launch of, is there another mic? Thank you. Our in Day 2025 has proposed the launch of a national digital repository of indigenous language resources. I add that such an arrangement should have a structure that will enable the coordination of efforts being made in different parts of the country. Each state and local government area should have a language digitization committee with representatives to a larger national committee. The Linguistic Association of Nigeria should champion such coordination efforts. I'm speaking in this way because I'm speaking directly to the Linguistic Association of Nigeria. So please pardon me. Number 7, relevant stakeholders must ensure that new technologies are available and accessible to indigenous language teachers, and that the teachers are enabled to build capacity in the requisite skills for using the new technologies. Number 8, recommendation. Nigerian linguists and language practitioners, which we are, must avail themselves of information about the availability of digital tools and resources, and also develop capacity in utilizing them. Thankfully, the current curriculum for the BA Linguistics program in Nigerian universities, which is contained in the Core Curriculum Minimum Academic Standards, CCMAS, includes courses that can equip Nigerian graduates of linguistics to be ICT literate and to utilize the new technologies relevant to the discipline. In the 70% which constitutes the input of the NUC, there are courses such as language documentation, language pathologies, disabilities and dysfunction, language business, Nigerian languages and national development /SDGs, digital linguistics, cognitive linguistics, computational linguistics, new and invented languages, and forensic linguistics. These are new areas that were included in calls for the revision of the traditional linguistics program in Nigerian universities. You can see UDO 2021 for that. So what we are hoping for has now come to us. It now depends on what we do with it. In addition, departments of linguistics can also leverage their 30% input to introduce courses in other relevant areas. I was the coordinator of the CCMAS for my department, and we use the 30% to introduce courses unheard of, just to enrich our program. So we have the ball in our courts, and we must play it well. I have personally wondered who will teach some of the new CCMAS courses as the curriculum is being put into use. My university started that in the session that just ended last month. I don't know in your university, who will teach those courses? Does the present crop of lecturers in our departments of linguistics have the capacity to produce graduates who will take our indigenous languages to the next level in this digital age? I leave you to answer the question, but let me re-echo the words of Arokoyo 2025 in her description of the modern Nigerian linguist, whom she calls the 21st century linguist. According to her, one of the core attributes of the 21st century linguist is language technological proficiency and development. They leverage digital tools for research and engage with technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to process and analyze large linguistic data sets. In her words, the linguist of the 21st century is, I quote, a dynamic, interdisciplinary scholar who combines traditional linguistic expertise with modern tools and global awareness to address the complexities of language in a rapidly evolving world. Today's linguist is not just a theorist, but a problem solver, working in speech technology, translation services, language preservation, artificial intelligence, etc. The linguist of the 21st century is a versatile, innovative, and socially conscious professional whose work transcends academia, addressing global challenges while respecting local realities. By combining traditional linguistic knowledge with modern technology and interdisciplinary collaboration, they play a pivotal role in preserving linguistic diversity, advancing communication technologies, and advocating for linguistic equity in an interconnected world. Arokoye 2025, pages 30 and 33. So whose duty is it to build the capacity of Nigerian linguists to fit the above description? Your guess is as good as mine. It is up to us to take action to upgrade our capacity to function effectively as linguists in the digital age. The last recommendation is this: there is need for a paradigm shift in how we teach Nigerian languages. Nigerian languages cannot be taught the same way they were taught in the 1980s, the 1990s, and the early 2000s if their continued vitality is to be ensured. We must not be like the people referred to in the following saying, the following quote, which is sometimes attributed to Mother Teresa or Konstantin Joseph UNIZIK, which I quote in part. This is the quotation, part of a quotation. We have done so much for so long with so little. We are now qualified to do anything with nothing. I'll repeat that quote. We have done so much for so long with so little. We are now qualified to do anything with nothing. I hope we will not be like the people in this quote. The integration of digital technology is vital for the survival of Nigerian languages in the digital era, and practical action must be taken by the relevant stakeholders to ensure this survival. Conclusion. I end this paper with a simple but meaningful story that you may have heard before. It is the story of 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. The story is entitled, Whose Job Is It Anyway? Please listen to the story. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have. What a story. The story may be confusing, but the message is clear. No one took responsibility, so nothing got accomplished. It is a story that plays out often in organizations and companies and on teams, anywhere there is a culture that lacks accountability. I leave the Linguistic Association of Nigeria with this challenge. There is an important job to be done, which is the integration of Nigerian languages into the digital ecosystem. What can we do about it now? Or would we rather think that somebody will do it? Next slide. Thank you for listening.
Please, let's muster another round of applause for our lead speaker. She's wowed us, and she's wowed me. Thank you so much. I learned something today, which, Chair, I'll soon come to you, Chair. And then, you know, the goat that is owned by everybody, you know what happens to it? Okay, we're going to take reactions. Am I right, Chair? Okay, I'll give to the Chair. All right, Chair. I humbly make the microphone no longer microphone, but your microphone.
So the floor is open for questions. I believe that we all understood everything that has gone down. Are we good? Comments and reactions. So first, I will summarize the first lead paper. The real issue is that language decline, our languages are declining as intergeneration transmission reduces. Tonal complexity makes languages difficult to digitize. Globalization and dominance of English. The major Nigerian languages are Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and Naija. Are we good? So Naija is the most widely spoken language in Nigeria. And it is also spoken in pretty much West Africa. So digitization involves creating digital corpora. Nigeria is falling behind in digitization efforts. So I'm summarizing the first lead paper. Digitizing Nigerian languages requires more than just language documentation. Language documentation requires significant funding. Multilingual countries are greatly challenged. So Hausa was proposed as a national language by somebody, and they said Enahoro rejected the proposal. Efforts at digitizing Nigerian languages highlighting online internet presence. Internet presence, languages with a strong internet presence tend to do well. And then there's Yusuf et al., 2020, examining the use of something. Due to constraints of space, so the most successful multilingual corpora that we have presently is the what is it? This Ebola. I have the something here. Terms relating to HIV/AIDS and Ebola, and they are available in 3 major Nigerian languages: Anfani and Ibrahim for Hausa, Ugbo and Nusi and Mba for English, Yusuf, Adetunji, and Odoje for Yoruba. So the very few coordinated efforts. Those are some of the things I put down. So the first paper was titled Digitizing Diversity, Embracing Innovations Towards the Preservation of Nigerian Languages in the Digital Era. And then the second presentation was Nigerian Languages in the Digital Era, Challenges and Opportunities. So some of the challenges identified were a lack of digital resources, lack of access to large corpora, lack of open source corpora, severe data scarcity, NLP, which requires large corpora, scaled data system, language attrition, lack of regular symbols, lack of knowledge of existing resources, preservation of linguistic diversity and preservation of culture, lack of standardized orthography, financial constraints, cultural and social factors, lack of collaboration among stakeholders. Stakeholders tend to work in silos. So I don't know what I have been able to do is, frankly, I'm not sure that we can cope if we keep behaving like this. So we need to cooperate. And so in the second paper, Nigerian Languages in the Digital Era, Challenges and Opportunities. Opportunities of digital technology include transmission of folk tales, preservation of cultural heritage, digital archives, digitization of linguistic heritage, and the challenges identified: lack of digital resources, lack of access to large corpora, lack of open source corpora, severe data scarcity. And NLP actually does require large corpora, scaled data system, lack of symbols. The lack of symbols is being taken care of. I don't know. Intergenerational transmission, lack of knowledge of existing resources, preservation. So some of the opportunities of digital technology is preservation of culture, that we are not preserving our culture. We have a lack of standardized orthography. We have financial constraints, cultural and social factors, lack of collaboration among stakeholders. The fact that, so what we do is that all of us are building our individual empires. We are not collaborating. So stakeholders are working in isolation. So that's basically the summary of what the papers brought to the table. And now I welcome comments and questions.
Give them numbers.
Man of God, you are number 1. President, you are number 2. Dr. Gab, you are number 3. Okay. Okay. Bros there. Man of God.
So that will go like this. On the door.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, my fellow conferees, and also the wonderful presenters. I thank God for today. I wish to say that since about 1996, when I started following the conference, I have enjoyed the contributions that are made towards the indigenous languages. And most of the outputs and the inputs of the conference or the clan are there also to checkmate the failings of our languages or the bad behaviors that come from we who own the languages. Following what we have today in this digital era, I feel that this conference is very contextual and very important for us. One of us, the second lead paper presenter, pointed out about the lack of enthusiasm about learning.
Learning indigenous
languages, precisely. Yeah. And even made reference to Hosea chapter 6, verse 9, about my people lacking knowledge. I think that if we are members of this conference and we have also become aware that human person face challenges, if we come into the fact of saying, let all of us bear in mind that man is multilingual by nature and can also be a polyglot to the point of learning many languages, up to 50. This conference can raise up a point of saying, let us be aware that the global languages today, we are built by people. And then those of us that have the Nigerian language can also wake up and build our own languages without allowing other languages to...
Man of God, can you say that in a Nigerian language?
Yes.
Yes.
In the Nigerian languages.
Of Igbo.
Igbo, precisely. For me, the Igbo language is well aware of the challenges. And I'm also part of the people that are thinking that we can globalize Igbo language to the point of whatever language, because I have followed the history of languages.
What I've just said is that the stuff that you said before, say it in Igbo.
Which one?
Say it in Igbo.
In Igbo language. I can do that in Igbo language. I write Igbo newspaper. Since 2001, I've been producing Igbo newspaper. And I also do the Igbo in Igbo precisely. Yeah.
Because of the number of persons we're going to attend to.
Yeah. So I'm only saying that I encourage the conference to take up the challenges and let our people be ready to learn, even learning many languages and not allowing the globalized languages to muzzle our own language. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President.
Thank you very much.
Madam President, can you say thank you in your native language?
Samo, masam. Ma means ma. Sam, thank you. Masamo, you must add the O at the end of the sentence. Samo, that's how we say it. So that's another language. That's not my language. Yako, yes, local. That's local. I speak Legbo. Okay, so thank you. That brings me to one point that was raised in the keynote address. There were a number of languages that were listed as the 10 languages that had the largest number. And then I didn't hear anything about Cross River. I don't think that list was complete. Cross River has many languages. Yes, yes, back to these two papers. Unfortunately, we did not have time to discuss the keynote. So I believe that comments about that are also in order. But let me now comment on the two papers that have just been presented. I thank you, the two lead paper presenters, for your presentations. Professor Yusuf would address the government, and the government is not here. But Professor Akinremi addressed linguists, and we are here. So I think we should marry both. So now, I have an issue, and that issue is with us. We are all linguists, and we work in departments of linguistics across Nigeria. And I think that question was asked somehow, which is that how many of us are looking at or studying or working on the languages in a catchment area where our institutions are based? So in the University of Uyo, where I work, our interest has been on the languages of Akwa Ibom State. And if you want information on those languages, beginning from the traditional phonemic analysis, which is the very basic place to start, you will have information on the languages across the state, and there are varieties, about 30 of them. We take on one after the other, and we are studying them, describing them, and trying to document them. So if you want some information, we can give you skeletal information, because that's what we are working on. So I advise that we all do that. Where we work, we should try and document the languages around us, because people will not come from elsewhere to come and do it for us. If we do that, we'll probably be able to have the very basic information that we need to empower those languages, so that when we are dealing with larger data, if that is needed, we will have something to show for it. Then my second point is the point that Professor Akinremi raised, that of the orthography. And I link that up to the first point I've just made, which is that if we work, describe, and document the languages around us, what we use to record will be a unified orthography that we should develop. And that unified orthography should be a responsibility of linguists, Linguistic Association of Nigeria, NINLAN, NERDC. We should come together, and we know what the sounds are, having described the sounds of the languages. We say this is Nigerian orthography, a unified Nigerian orthography. We can work towards that, so that if I want to write, I want to collect fables in Legbo, my language, I will draw from that orthography. I will not need NRDC to come and do a special approval, which they do anyway, and how many are there to be able to cover over 540 languages? I think NRDC is here. They are represented here. So if we had a unified orthography, if I want to document the stories, the proverbs in my language, I'll just draw from those sounds. We know them. If it's the villa nasal, we say it is N with a bar on top, or we'll agree on a symbol. So everybody will know that this sound is this symbol. So you draw from that, and you begin to record the large language data that we need for the NLP. I don't know whether I'm making a point. That's the point I want to make. For us,
Thank you very much. People don't vex, President.